Previous video, I started to get into moving overseas for a testing role. In this one, I want to fill in the gaps. I think there are some areas in this topic I didn't get to cover, so that's what I'm going to speak about today, including more help in how to land a job, a few more things to be aware of if you're going to move overseas for a role, and some ideas or examples as to which companies offer sponsorship. Let's get into it. You move overseas for a testing role, and more specifically, if you move overseas and are getting sponsored, the first thing I would want to check is if the visa or work permit you're getting is tied specifically to your employer or to the industry itself. And by this I mean, in some context, you would really struggle to switch jobs once you're in that new country. So it could be very helpful to do research there. Another thing that can be very helpful is to check if whether or not you being laid off affects your future in the company and to what extent. So I know, for example, when I was living in New Zealand, in my previous video I mentioned that I got laid off. I also was working with someone who was in New Zealand on a work visa, and for him, he had some period of time under which he could continue to job hunt or stay in the country and look for a job before he would be considered legal in the country. So this could be some fine print that's worth looking into in case something bad happens. By far, I think the hardest part of moving to another country for a testing role, or for most roles, to be honest, is actually landing a job. If you are based in another country, you probably lack the network, and in, I think, all over the world, that is something that people tend to rely on. So my first piece of advice is to build a network. Easier said than done, but some examples would be to join and participate in online testing communities. I know there's a Telegram group called Test Chat. I'll share links down below for everything I mention. There's the Ministry of Testing community. I could also connect with people on LinkedIn. I think when you are building a network and you're thinking, oh, I want to, make connections so then I can find a job. And what has happened to me is I get connection requests and I get messages saying, hi, I'm looking for a job. I'd like to move to another country. Do you know of anything going? And what I would suggest to people who I'm coaching or mentoring would be to not just think about what they want now, but to think what do they want in, say, 1 or 2 years' time. So if you are, say you're living in Sweden and you're not thinking, oh, I want to move to New Zealand in 1 or 2 months or now, but maybe in 1 or 2 years, I think it'd be really cool to live in New Zealand. Then start to network for the future. Start to make connections with people that you know of in New Zealand. Put in the work now to get the dividends later. The second part, or the second piece of advice I would give for landing a job if you're based overseas, is to make yourself known. Now, what do I mean by this? By known, I don't mean, to be famous, but more specifically to be seen as less of a risk. So to give people the feel that they have gotten to know you. I had mentioned in my previous video that there's more work involved to get someone into the country for a job than it is to hire a local candidate. You kind of want to show potential employers that, not just say through a CV or through a cover letter, give them extra reasons why you're worth that investment, why you're worth that extra time and effort. There are probably heaps of ways you can do this that I can think of right now, but the two that really come to mind would be one, blogging. Now you may be thinking, oh, what do I have to say? People don't care about what I have to say. But I would just share my ideas, or share your ideas, what you have learned in an online course, or maybe even a course that you've done at work. You could also share notes from a conference talk on YouTube. If you want to know more details on this topic, I've written a pretty comprehensive blog post on getting started with blogging as a tester, so you could check that out in the description. The second is to speak on online meetups. Now, what you could do here is go on meetup.com and search for meetups in the countries or the areas that you're interested in moving to. Now, once you're on that page, check to see if they've been having online meetups. Chances are, if they've done it before, they'd be open to doing it again. And once you've found the meetup, you could also reach out to the organizer and say, hey, I'd love to give a talk on blah, blah topic. Are there any upcoming meetups you have a speaking slot at? Now, as a past meetup organizer, I would really appreciate that, because it's actually takes a lot of time and effort actually finding speakers, and you need speakers for a meetup, or you need speakers for events. So you're both kind of helping each other in that regard. I realize saying to someone who's based overseas to apply at large or multinational companies might not be very useful advice if you are based overseas, and that's because you might not know what is an established brand outside of your home country. So in the next section, I'm going to go over some specific examples of companies you could consider if you are looking to move to Canada, New Zealand, or Sweden. But if you are looking into other companies, then I would say a Google search along the lines of companies that offer visa sponsorship in insert country here should help you out. To start off with, there are several companies in New Zealand that offer visa sponsorship, but as of my disclaimer, please double check the requirements and if they're offering sponsorship right now before you apply. First, we have Fisher and Paykel Healthcare. Second, we have Xero. They are an accounting software company, and they provide services to small businesses and accountants. Third, we have Orion Health. They are a healthcare software company. Fourth, we have Frond, a digital transformation company. Fifth, we have Weta Digital. So they are known for their visual effects, and if you've watched movies such as The Lord of the Rings, Avatar, and Avengers Endgame, then you are familiar with their work. Sixth, we have Jade Software. They specialize in creating software solutions for industries such as finance, healthcare, and logistics. Seventh, we have Air New Zealand. They are the national airline of New Zealand. Eighth, we have Fonterra. They produce and export dairy products. Ninth, we have Fletcher Building. They are a construction and building materials company. And lastly, we have Spark, a telecommunications company. There are several Canadian tech companies that provide visa sponsorship if you're looking to move to Canada. Here we have Shopify, Hootsuite, Slack, FreshBooks, Lightspeed, Clio, Wave, Tandem, Figma, and Unbounce. Now let's get into companies in Sweden that you could consider if you'd like to move to Sweden for work or for a testing role. The first is IKEA. Now, as someone who works into IKEA, I know a lot of people at work who are sponsored, and I'm not even kidding. You'd be surprised how many people I meet here in Skåne who moved to Sweden to join IKEA. Second company would be Volvo, the car manufacturer. Third, Massive Entertainment. They do games. Fourth, King. They're known for Candy Crush Saga. And fifth, H&M, or as we call it here, H&M. They are the clothing retailer. Let's get a bit into relocation packages. So the first thing to ask is one mentioned in the job ad? If not, then it doesn't hurt to ask the hiring manager early in the process that if they are open to external candidates, then are they supporting relocation costs in some way?
This could be in different forms, but from when I've spoken to friends who have had a relocation package when they move overseas, they have they would have some sort of budget, so they could spend up to a certain amount on relocation costs. So I'm not sure if that's a very common way, but at least that's what I know of. And this would cover costs such as shipping your belongings to your new country, flights for you and your family. It could even cover the cost of housing for a short period of time. Now, the relocation package, or at least help with relocation, could also cover help to find housing. One story I want to share is one of my friends who moved to Stockholm a few years ago. When she was thinking of taking the job, she reached out to me and she said, hey, I'm going to move to Stockholm. I said, okay, cool. I hope your company's going to help you find housing. It's really hard to find an apartment in Stockholm. And I said, are they helping you find an apartment, or will they give you access to some sort of agency? And she said no. I said, oh, well, I really recommend that you ask for that. And she ended up negotiating some extra fixed amount in addition, or some sort of, I think it was like called a sign-up bonus, in addition to her regular salary. And she used that money to, I think, pay for Airbnb costs for the first month or two while she was doing the initial apartment hunt. I had also another friend in Stockholm who got a lot of help from their employer. So I think for the first 1.5 years, his employer provided him with an apartment, and then he had to pay way below market rates for that apartment, but he never had to worry about searching for a place. Help with relocation comes in different forms, but I really highly recommend that you ask about it if you're seriously considering a role, or especially if you're looking to be a strong contender and you're starting to discuss things like benefits and what have you.